Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Last time we discussed a model answer for the past paper question on the poem To the Nile. Now today I'm going to give you a model answer to the question on Big Batch 1983, which is the second question on the 2020 past paper under the poetry section that appears in part 2. Okay, once again, if you need more content like this, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, please let us know down in the comments. And we would highly appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, let's see what the question is. Discuss how a sense of social conflict is presented in the poem Big Batch 1983. Discuss how a sense of social conflict is presented in the poem Big Batch 1983. Okay, this is the question. Like I said last week, the first thing you need to do when answering a question is to understand the question. For this, we need to take a look at the keywords and understand their interrelation. Now, in this question, the most obvious key phrases are social conflict and Big Batch 1983. But we're not done yet. The most important keyword in this question is how. Right? I have seen many students missing points like these. So this is why we need to look at the keywords and phrases very carefully so we wouldn't miss anything. Now, whenever there is a how in the question, you need to understand that we are expected to talk about techniques mainly. Okay? Because this devices is how the poet brings out the theme of social conflict, which is the other key phrase we have. Okay, so basically you can see what we are going to do is to comment on how techniques develop the theme of social conflict in our answer. Okay, now let's try to develop the introduction. I'll start off the intro by introducing the writer and then what the poem is mainly about. Okay, it goes like this. The poem Big Batch 1983 is written by the renowned Sri Lankan poet Yasmine. She discusses the broad issue of ethnic conflict through the tragic event of Black July, which occurred in 1983 in Colombo. Many innocent Tamil civilians were victimized by Sinhala extremist mobs in a vain attempt to avenge the death of soldiers who were killed by the LTTE. The poet exploits many techniques to describe the tragedy, which heightens its poignancy. Thus, the essay will discuss how Gurnatha conveys her message about social conflict and violence through the use of a variety of devices. Now, let's build up the body. This is the intro. Like you can see, the last sentence of the introduction is the thesis statement. Now, when we talk about the body, building up the body, we need to divide the thesis statement into 3 points. Right? Now, I have explained what a thesis statement is in my previous video. If you haven't watched that, I'll add the link in the description so you can go ahead and watch that later on. A thesis statement is the main argument of your answer and tells the examiner what you're going to prove. Now, it always comes at the end of the introduction, the last sentence of your introduction. So, mainly, basically, our thesis statement is to discuss how the techniques develop the theme of social conflict, right? Now, I said earlier that we need to break it down into 3 sections, right? So, in this essay, I'm going to talk about 3 aspects. First of all, I'm going to talk about media. Then I'm going to talk about the corrupt political ideologies or agendas. Lastly, I'm going to talk about ethnic hatred, right? All these factors are related to the theme of social conflict in many different ways. And after figuring that out, I'm going to look at the main literary devices or techniques used by the poet to express these 3 ideas. Okay, so we can see that she uses sarcasm and paradox to talk about media mainly, then metaphor and sarcasm to talk about corrupt political agendas or ideologies, and finally sarcasm, symbolism and metaphor to talk about ethnic hatred. Right, so this is how we are going to develop the 3 body paragraphs. These are the main key points. And now let's take a look at the topic sentence for our first body paragraph. I also explained how to write a body paragraph according to the Peele structure in my previous video, and you can watch it using the link in the description once again. Okay, having said that, the first point in the first body paragraph is about media and using sarcasm and paradox, right? And it can go on this way. Using sarcasm and paradox, the poet criticizes media organizations that sensationalize the tragedy. Using sarcasm and paradox, the poet criticizes media organizations that sensationalize the tragedy. Okay, as I mentioned at an earlier point, the first sentence of your paragraph is called a topic sentence, or according to the Peel structure, it is called a point. Both are the same, topic sentence, point. Right? Now let's take a look at the rest of the body paragraph. Instead of resolving the conflict, such irresponsible actions spread intolerance. Flashpoint in paradise, racial pot boils over. The line contains newspaper headlines published by foreign media organizations. The writer is sarcastic about the use of such headlines to sensationalize the tragedy. The phrase flashpoint in paradise contains a paradox. A flashpoint is a place, event, or time at which violence or hostility flares up. A paradise is the total opposite of a flashpoint. The juxtaposition of these opposing words brings out the transformation of Sri Lanka from being a peaceful country to one that is conflict-ridden. The use of paradox in newspaper headlines heightens the sensational nature of the news. Thus, the poet uses sarcasm and paradox to criticize media organizations that used racial hatred to gain clout. Okay, now let's take a look at the second topic sentence and the second body paragraph. The corrupt political ideologies which led to the event of Black July are portrayed through metaphor and sarcasm. We strive to be objective, try to trace the match that lit this sacrificial fire. The educated masses try to uncover the root cause of the ethnic conflicts. The match is a metaphor for the ethnic conflict which sparked flames of hatred between Sinhalese and Tamils. It also has the connotation of a cricket match that signifies the competitive nature of the two rival groups involved, the government and the LTTE. The conflict finds its roots in treacherous politics of language, which is a reference to the Sinhala-only Act that was introduced in 1956. The Act was seen as an example of deceitful political agendas of the authorities. Such treacherous politics spread big match fever, and has both sides in its grip and promises dizzier scores than any at the Oval. Both sides, the government and the LTTE, promise their groups unattainable promises. Sarcasm can be detected in these lines as the poet compares racial hatred and rivalry of the ethnic conflict to the competitive nature of a cricket match. Thus, the poet exploits metaphor and sarcasm to criticize corrupt political ideologies that led to such a tragedy. Okay, now to the last point, or the third body paragraph, or the third point. This is on ethnic hatred and violence and how these aspects are brought into light by techniques. The violence afflicted to Tamils becomes poignant in the last stanza due to the use of imagery, symbolism and sarcasm. Shop fronts in Petta, landmarks of our childhood, curve like old photographs in the flames. The lines create an image of shops belonging to Tamil merchants burning down due to attacks. The poet compares the burning shop fronts to photographs burning in the flames. Photographs stand for happy memories. The fact that they are burning signifies the destruction of such harmonious memories. The violence against Tamils is well reflected in the image of a man being attacked by mobs under a boat tree, falls to his knees beneath the boat tree in a shower of sticks and stones flung by his neighbor's hand. The boat tree is a symbol of Buddhist values which do not advocate violence under any circumstance. Therefore, the image of the man attacked under a boat tree heightens sarcasm. The fact that the Tamil man is being attacked under a boat tree signifies that racial hatred goes beyond religious devotion. Thus, using techniques such as imagery, symbolism, and sarcasm, the poet conveys a despondence over racial hatred and violence. Okay, great. And now we are coming down to the conclusion where we string the main body paragraphs together. Now, so what we do here is to summarize the paragraphs in one sentence. For example, the first paragraph with one sentence, second paragraph with another sentence, like that. Now, we start off the conclusion by reminding the purpose of writing this essay. It goes on like this. The essay analyzes the way the poet develops the theme of social conflict using literary devices. At the outset, Gunaratna criticizes media organizations that use racial hatred to gain clout, mainly using sarcasm and paradox. She also uses metaphor and sarcasm to criticize corrupt political ideologies that caused racial conflict among Sinhalese and Tamils. In the latter half of the poem, violence against Tamils is vividly portrayed through imagery, symbolism, and sarcasm. Thus, it can be said that techniques help develop a nuanced understanding of the nature of social conflict in the poem. Okay, great. Finally, we are done with writing the essay. I want to remind you one thing though. Like I always say, this is not the only way to write an essay type answer. It is surely one of the many ways, yes, but not the only way. Now, your success in writing these kinds of answers depends mostly on your level of practice, right? So, the more you write, the more you will become successful in writing these answers. So, the advice I can give you is to practice whenever possible. Right? Having said that, I'm going to call it a day. Thanks for watching and take care, folks.